The bright lights of St. Mary's Hospital did little to comfort Sarah Matthews as she lay in the delivery room, her blonde hair matted with sweat against her pale skin. At just 23 years old, she wasn't ready for what was about to happen. The nurses moved around her with practiced efficiency, their voices gentle and encouraging, but Sarah's mind was somewhere else entirely. "Just one more push, Sarah," the doctor urged, his voice calm and steady. "Your baby is almost here." Sarah closed her blue eyes tightly, tears streaming down her face. This wasn't how she had imagined becoming a mother. 6 months ago, her boyfriend Marcus had left her after a heated argument about their future. He was black, and her conservative family had never approved of their relationship. The sound of a baby's first cry filled the room, cutting through Sarah's thoughts like a knife. She held her breath, waiting, dreading what she would see. "Congratulations! It's a beautiful baby girl," the nurse announced cheerfully, holding up the newborn. Sarah's heart stopped as she looked at her daughter for the first time. The baby had Marcus's dark skin tone, his nose, his curly hair. She was the spitting image of her father. Sarah turned her head away, unable to look anymore. Her mother's words from last week echoed in her head. "You can always give it up for adoption, Sarah. Think about your future. Think about what people will say." The nurse, Mrs. Johnson, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, gently placed the baby in Sarah's arms. "Would you like to hold your daughter?" she asked, her eyes full of understanding and free from judgment. Sarah's arms remained stiff as she looked down at the tiny face. The baby opened her eyes, revealing deep brown orbs that seemed to stare right into her soul. Something inside Sarah cracked, a mixture of fear, shame, and prejudices she didn't even know she had bubbled to the surface. I can't," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't keep her." Mrs. Johnson's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her professional composure. "Take some time, dear. It's a big decision. You're both tired right now." But Sarah's mind was already made up. The thought of walking down the street with a black baby, facing the stares and whispers in their small town, dealing with her family's disappointment, it was too much. She was too weak, too young, too unprepared for the challenges that lay ahead. The next morning, a social worker named Lisa Martinez sat beside Sarah's hospital bed, explaining the adoption process. Sarah nodded mechanically as Lisa went through the paperwork, her eyes occasionally drifting to the nursery window where her daughter slept peacefully. "Have you thought about a name for her?" Lisa asked gently. It would be documented in her original birth certificate. Sarah shook her head. She hadn't allowed herself to think about names, knowing it would make everything harder. "The adoptive parents can name her," she said quietly. As Sarah picked up the pen to sign the papers, Mrs. Johnson appeared at the door. "Would you like to hold her one more time?" she offered. "Sometimes mothers want a moment to say goodbye." Sarah's hand trembled over the papers. "No," she whispered. "It's better this way." She quickly signed her name on all the marked lines, each signature feeling like a knife in her heart. Lisa gathered the papers, her expression professional but her eyes sad. "We'll ensure she goes to a loving home, Sarah. You can leave updated contact information with us if you ever change your mind about having a relationship with her in the future." Sarah declined, pushing away the contact forms. She couldn't imagine ever wanting to revisit this moment, this decision, this pain. As soon as she was discharged, she planned to move to a different city and start fresh. No one would need to know about the baby she gave away. That evening, as Sarah's mother helped her pack her hospital bag, the baby's cry echoed down the hallway. Sarah flinched, her hands clutching a clean shirt so tightly her knuckles turned white. "You're doing the right thing, sweetheart," her mother assured her, patting her shoulder. "In a few years, this will all feel like a bad dream." But as Sarah walked out of the hospital on shaky legs, leaving her newborn daughter behind, something deep inside told her that this moment would haunt her forever. She didn't look back as she got into her mother's car, didn't allow herself one last glance at the hospital window. What Sarah didn't know then was that this decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change multiple lives forever, and that the daughter she left behind would one day become the key to her own redemption. Patricia Washington stood nervously in the adoption agency's waiting room, her heart beating fast as she smoothed down her navy blue dress for the 100th time. At 40 years old, after years of unsuccessful attempts to have her own child, she was finally going to become a mother. Lisa Martinez, The social worker emerged from her office with a bright smile. "Are you ready to meet your daughter, Ms. Washington?" Patricia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. As an elementary school teacher for 15 years, she had cared for hundreds of children, but this was different. This little girl would be hers. The nursery was quiet except for the soft humming of the air conditioner. Lisa led Patricia to a crib where a beautiful baby girl lay awake, her big brown eyes curious and alert. "She's just 2 days old," Lisa explained, gently lifting the baby. "Would you like to hold her?" Patricia reached out with trembling hands, and the moment the baby settled in her arms, tears began rolling down her cheeks. "Hello, sweetheart," she whispered. "I'm your mama." The baby looked up at Patricia, and a tiny hand reached out to grab her finger. At that moment, Patricia knew that skin color, blood relations, and genetics meant nothing compared to the love already flooding her heart. "I want to name her Olivia," Patricia said softly. "Olivia Joy Washington, because she's bringing so much joy into my life." Over the next few months, Patricia and Olivia settled into a beautiful routine in their cozy 2-bedroom house. Patricia had transformed the spare room into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow and filling the shelves with children's books. Every evening, she would sit in the rocking chair, holding Olivia close, and read stories about strong, beautiful black women throughout history. "You're going to grow up knowing your worth," Patricia would tell her daughter. "You're going to know that you're loved, wanted, and precious." As Olivia grew, she showed a remarkable interest in music. When she was 3, Patricia noticed how her daughter would stop whatever she was doing whenever music played. She would sway, bounce, and hum along, showing an incredible sense of rhythm for her age. "Mama, piano," Olivia would exclaim whenever they passed the music store in the mall. Patricia, though on a teacher's salary, started saving up. By Olivia's 4th birthday, a second-hand upright piano found its way into their living room. The joy on Olivia's face when she first touched the piano keys was unforgettable. Patricia signed her up for lessons with Mrs. Chen, an elderly piano teacher who lived down the street. To everyone's amazement, Olivia took to it like a fish to water. "Your daughter has a gift," Mrs. Chen told Patricia during one lesson. "She doesn't just play the notes, she feels the music." At school, Olivia was equally bright. Patricia made sure to nurture both her daughter's academic abilities and her emotional growth. When other kids asked why Olivia's mom was darker than some of their black friends, Patricia explained about different shades of beauty. When Olivia asked about her birth parents, Patricia was honest but gentle. "Someone wasn't ready to be a mommy," she would explain. "But I was ready. I wanted you so much. God made us a family in a different way, but our love is just as real." One evening, when Olivia was 5, she climbed into Patricia's lap after her bath, her curly hair still damp and smelling of coconut shampoo. "Mama," she said thoughtfully, "today Jenny said I was adopted." "What does that mean?" Patricia held her daughter close, breathing in her sweet scent. "It means that I chose you, baby girl. Some mamas have their babies in their tummies, but I had you in my heart. And when you were born, I knew you were meant to be my daughter." Olivia seemed to consider this for a moment. "Like when I chose Sparkles at the pet store?" she asked, referring to her goldfish. Patricia laughed softly. "Something like that, but much more special. You're the best choice I ever made." As she tucked Olivia into bed that night, Patricia watched her daughter sleep peacefully, surrounded by her stuffed animals and the soft glow of her butterfly nightlight. She thought about the young woman who had given birth to this precious child and said a quiet prayer of thanks. What neither Patricia nor Olivia knew was that somewhere across the city, that same young woman was starting to question the choice she had made 5 years ago, setting the stage for a future none of them could have imagined. 10 years had passed since that day at the hospital. Sarah Matthews, now Sarah Anderson, sat in her luxurious living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. Her twin boys, James and Michael, smiled back at her from their latest school pictures. Her husband Tom's business success had given them everything money could buy: a big house in the best neighborhood, expensive cars, and private school education for the twins. But at night, when everyone was asleep, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about her firstborn. "Honey, the boys need help with their math homework," Tom called from the study. Sarah blinked away her thoughts and walked to where her 8-year-old twins sat struggling with their multiplication tables. "Mom, this is too hard," James complained, pushing his notebook away. Sarah sat between her sons, helping them with their work, but her mind kept wandering. Would her daughter be good at math? Would she have Sarah's talent for numbers? Or would she be more creative like Marcus had been? Later that evening, while loading the dishwasher, Sarah heard the twins arguing upstairs. "It's my turn to use the iPad," Michael shouted. "No, it's mine," James yelled back. Sarah closed her eyes, the noise suddenly too much to bear. These moments with the twins made her wonder who was helping her daughter with homework, who was settling her arguments, who was tucking her into bed at night. The next morning, after dropping the boys at school, Sarah drove to her regular therapy session. Dr. Karen Miller's office had become her safe space over the last 6 months. "You seem distracted today, Sarah," Dr. Miller observed, noting how Sarah kept fidgeting with her wedding ring. "I had the dream again," Sarah admitted quietly. "The one about the hospital, but this time, instead of just hearing the baby cry, I saw her. She was older, maybe 10 or 11, and she was looking right at me." Dr. Miller leaned forward in her chair. "Tell me more about these feelings you're having." Sarah's carefully maintained composure cracked. "I gave her away because I was scared and stupid. I let my family's prejudices control me. I wasn't strong enough to stand up to them, to be the mother she deserved." "It's significant that you're acknowledging these feelings," Dr. Miller said gently. "Have you considered looking into how she's doing?" Sarah wiped her tears with a tissue. "I didn't leave any contact information. I was so determined to pretend it never happened. Tom doesn't even know about her." That evening, during the twins' soccer practice, Sarah sat in her car and did something she'd been afraid to do for years. She searched online for information about transracial adoption and stories of birth mothers who had reconnected with their children. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Don't forget the country club dinner tonight. The Petersons want to discuss investing in Tom's new project." Sarah stared at the message, remembering how 10 years ago the same woman had convinced her that giving up her baby was the only option. The country club, the social status, the perfect family image, it all felt hollow now. At dinner that night, while everyone discussed business and golf scores, Sarah watched the other families in the restaurant. At a nearby table, a white mother helped her black daughter cut her food, both of them laughing at some private joke. The sight made Sarah's chest tight. "Are you feeling all right, dear?" her mother asked, noticing Sarah's distraction. "You've barely touched your food." "I'm fine," Sarah lied, the same way she had been lying for 10 years. That night, after everyone was asleep, Sarah sat in her home office and opened her laptop. With trembling fingers, she typed an email to the adoption agency where she had given up her daughter. She stared at the blank email for a long time, unsure what to write. "Finally," she began, "10 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life." Before she could continue, she heard small footsteps in the hallway. "Mom?" Michael called out. "I had a bad dream." Sarah quickly closed the laptop and went to comfort her son, but her unfinished email weighed heavily on her mind. What she didn't know was that her daughter was closer than she imagined, and their paths were about to cross in an unexpected way that would change everything. The Franklin Middle School auditorium buzzed with excitement on the day of the regional music competition. Sarah sat in the middle row, her twin boys fidgeting beside her as they waited for their friend Kevin to perform. "How much longer?" James whispered, playing a game on his phone. "Put that away," Sarah whispered back. "We need to support Kevin. He's your friend." The competition host walked onto the stage, holding a microphone. "Next up, we have Olivia Washington, performing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata." Sarah wasn't really paying attention until a young girl walked onto the stage. The moment she saw her, Sarah's world stopped spinning. The girl was around 10 years old, with beautiful dark skin and curly hair pulled back neatly with a blue ribbon. She wore a pretty white dress and walked with confidence toward the grand piano. Sarah's hands began to shake. The girl, Olivia, looked exactly like Marcus, just like the baby she had held briefly in the hospital 10 years ago. Same nose, same graceful way of moving, even the same determined expression. "Mom, are you okay?" Michael asked, noticing how pale his mother had become. Sarah couldn't answer. She watched as Olivia sat at the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. The music filled the auditorium, and everyone fell silent. Even the twins stopped fidgeting. 3 rows ahead, Sarah noticed a black woman recording the performance on her phone, tears of pride shining in her eyes. This must be Olivia's adoptive mother, a woman who had raised her daughter for the past 10 years. Olivia's fingers moved across the keys with incredible skill. Her face showed deep concentration, but also joy. She wasn't just playing the music, she was feeling it, living it. Sarah remembered how Marcus used to play guitar the same way. "She's really good," James whispered, genuinely impressed. Sarah could barely breathe. Her daughter, the baby she had given away, was here, in the same room, creating something beautiful. She watched as Olivia reached the most challenging part of the piece, her small fingers dancing across the keys without a single mistake. In the audience, Olivia's mother beamed with pride, occasionally wiping tears from her eyes. Next to her sat an elderly Asian woman who Sarah guessed must be Olivia's piano teacher, nodding along with approval. As the final notes faded away, the audience burst into applause. Olivia stood up, smiled brightly, and gave a perfect bow. Her mother was the first to stand, leading a standing ovation. Sarah found herself standing too, clapping until her hands hurt, tears streaming down her face. "Why are you crying, Mom?" Michael asked, confused by his mother's reaction. Because it was so beautiful," Sarah managed to say. After Olivia left the stage, Sarah couldn't focus on any other performances. She watched as Olivia returned to her seat, hugging her mother tightly. The woman kissed Olivia's forehead and handed her a small bouquet of flowers. They looked so happy, so complete. During the intermission, Sarah excused herself and rushed to the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm down. In the mirror, she saw a woman who had everything money could buy but had given away something priceless. When she returned to her seat, Sarah overheard two women talking in the row behind her. "That Olivia Washington is something special," one said. "I heard she's already won 3 competitions this year." "Patricia must be so proud," the other replied. "She's done an amazing job raising her alone." Patricia, so that was her name. Sarah watched as Patricia wrapped an arm around Olivia, whispering something that made the girl smile. They looked like they belonged together, despite having no biological connection. At the end of the competition, when they announced the winners, Olivia won first place. Sarah watched her daughter walk back onto the stage, accepting the trophy with a bright smile. Patricia was crying happy tears, recording every moment on her phone. As people began leaving the auditorium, Sarah remained seated, unable to move. The twins pulled at her arms, ready to go home, but she couldn't take her eyes off Olivia and Patricia as they celebrated with friends and family. What Sarah didn't know was that this unexpected encounter would give her the courage to finally take the next step, reaching out to the adoption agency and facing the consequences of her past decision. 2 weeks after the music competition, Sarah sat in her parked car outside the Bright Futures Adoption Agency. The same brick building where she had signed away her rights 10 years ago hadn't changed much. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she gathered her courage. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror. She had told Tom she was going shopping, and the twins were at school. This was her chance. The bell above the door chimed as Sarah walked in. The waiting room smelled of coffee and artificial flowers, just like she remembered. A young receptionist looked up with a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm here to speak with someone about a child I placed for adoption 10 years ago." Sarah's voice trembled slightly. "Of course. Let me check if Lisa Martinez is available. She handles most of our post-adoption inquiries." Sarah's heart jumped. Lisa, the same social worker who had helped her that day. A few minutes later, a door opened and Lisa walked out. Her hair had some gray now, but her kind eyes were the same. "Sarah Matthews?" Lisa said softly, recognition crossing her face. "Or is it a different name now?" "Sarah Anderson," she corrected, following Lisa into her office. "I got married." Lisa's office was warm and welcoming, with children's artwork on the walls. She gestured for Sarah to sit down. "I've thought about you over the years," Lisa admitted, pulling out a file. "Your case stayed with me." Sarah twisted her wedding ring nervously. "I saw her," she blurted out, "at a music competition. She was playing piano. She's beautiful." Lisa nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Olivia has done very well. Her adoptive mother, Patricia Washington, has given her a wonderful life." "Patricia." Sarah repeated the name softly. She seems like an amazing mother. The way she looked at Olivia, that's how I should have looked at her. What made you decide to come here today? Lisa asked gently. Sarah took a deep breath. I need to make things right. Not to disrupt their lives, but I want Olivia to know I'm sorry. That it wasn't her fault. That I was young and scared and wrong. Lisa pulled out some papers from her desk. We have a process for this. First, we contact the adoptive parent. Patricia has the right to decide if she wants to facilitate any contact. Olivia's well-being comes first. Of course, Sarah nodded quickly. I wouldn't want to upset them. I should tell you, Lisa continued carefully, Patricia has been very open with Olivia about her adoption. She's raised her to be proud of who she is, to understand both her black heritage and her mixed-race identity. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. That's more than I could have done back then. I was so caught up in what other people would think. My parents, my friends. And now? Lisa asked. Now I have 2 sons who I love more than anything. But there's always been this hole in my heart. Seeing her at that competition, hearing her play, I realized what I threw away because of my own prejudices. Lisa handed Sarah some forms. These are information update forms. You can share as much or as little as you want. Medical history, personal information, a letter if you wish. We'll pass everything to Patricia, and she'll decide what to share with Olivia. Sarah's hands shook as she took the papers. What if they hate me? This isn't about hate or forgiveness, Lisa said kindly. It's about truth, healing, and what's best for Olivia. Take these forms home. Think carefully about what you want to say. As Sarah left the agency, clutching the envelope of forms, she felt both terrified and relieved. In her car, she pulled out her phone and, for the first time, told Tom she needed to talk to him about something important. On her drive home, Sarah passed the music store where she had seen Olivia performing. The store's window displayed a poster for upcoming piano competitions. She wondered if Olivia would be performing at any of them. What Sarah didn't know was that Patricia had also been thinking about the possibility of this day coming, preparing herself and Olivia for the moment when the past might catch up with their present. The small coffee shop on Oak Street was quiet on Saturday morning. Patricia Washington arrived first, choosing a table in the corner where she could see the door. Her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup as she waited for the woman who had given birth to her daughter. Lisa Martinez from the adoption agency had called her last week. Olivia's birth mother has made contact, she had said. She saw Olivia at the music competition. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah walked in. Patricia recognized her immediately from the competition, the woman who had been crying during Olivia's performance. Sarah looked nervous in her simple blue dress, her blonde hair neatly tied back. Mrs. Washington? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper as she approached the table. Please, sit. Patricia gestured to the empty chair. Her voice was polite but careful. Sarah sat down, her hands shaking as she placed her purse on the table. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Thank you, Sarah finally said, her eyes filling with tears. Thank you for giving her everything I couldn't. Patricia took a deep breath. I didn't do it for you. I did it for Olivia. She's my daughter in every way that matters. I know, Sarah nodded quickly. I saw how much she loves you at the competition, how proud you were of her. The waitress came to take Sarah's order, giving both women a moment to collect their thoughts. After she left, Patricia pulled out her phone. Would you like to see some pictures? She offered, surprising herself with the gesture. Sarah's eyes lit up. Yes, please. Patricia showed her photos of Olivia growing up. Her first day of school, piano recitals, birthday parties, family vacations. In each picture, Olivia's smile grew bigger, her confidence more visible. She started playing piano when she was 4, Patricia explained. She just had this natural talent. Like her father, Sarah said softly. Marcus was very musical. Patricia's expression became serious. Why did you really come back, Sarah? Why now? Sarah wiped her eyes with a napkin. Seeing her at the competition, it broke something in me. All these years, I tried to pretend I made the right choice. But watching you with her, seeing what an amazing person she's becoming, I realized how wrong I was. Do you know what it's like? Patricia's voice trembled slightly, to explain to a 5-year-old why her birth mother didn't want her, to help her understand that the color of her skin had something to do with it. Sarah flinched at the words. I was young and stupid. I let my family's racism and my own fears control me. I can't change that, but I want to try to make things right. And your family now? Patricia asked. Your husband, your other children, do they know about Olivia? I told Tom everything last week, Sarah admitted. He was shocked, but he's supporting my decision to make contact. The twins don't know yet. Patricia took another sip of her coffee, thinking carefully. Olivia has questions. She's always had questions. But she's also happy, well-adjusted, and loved. I won't let anything hurt her. I understand, Sarah said. I'm not trying to take her from you. I want her to know that giving her up wasn't her fault. It was my failure, not hers. Patricia pulled out one more photo, Olivia at her recent piano competition, holding her trophy. This is who she is now. Strong, talented, proud of herself. If you want to be part of her life, even in a small way, you need to accept and celebrate all of her. Sarah looked at the photo, touching it gently. She's beautiful. You've raised her to be beautiful inside and out. As their meeting came to an end, both women stood up awkwardly. Patricia gathered her things and posed. I'll talk to Olivia, she said finally. I'll explain that you want to meet her, but it will be her choice, and we'll do it on her terms. Sarah nodded gratefully. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. What neither woman knew was that Olivia had already noticed her birth mother at the competition and had questions of her own that would soon need answers. Olivia Washington sat at her piano, playing scales to calm her nerves. Today was the day she would meet her birth mother. Her mom, Patricia, sat on the couch nearby, watching her with concerned eyes. We don't have to do this if you're not ready, baby, Patricia said softly. Olivia's fingers paused on the keys. I want to know why, Mom. I need to understand. They had chosen to meet at their home, where Olivia felt safest. Dr. Thompson, a family therapist, would be there too. The kitchen counter held cookies Olivia had baked that morning, trying to keep her hands busy. At exactly 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. Olivia jumped slightly, and Patricia squeezed her shoulder before going to answer the door. Dr. Thompson arrived first, followed a few minutes later by Sarah. Olivia watched from the living room as her birth mother stepped inside. Sarah looked different from what she had imagined all these years. More real, more nervous. Hello, Olivia, Sarah said softly, staying near the door. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Olivia moved closer to Patricia instinctively. Hi, she replied, her voice quiet but steady. Dr. Thompson helped everyone sit down. Olivia and Patricia on the couch, Sarah in an armchair across from them. The therapist sat between them, creating a comfortable space for conversation. Would you like a cookie? Olivia offered suddenly, surprising everyone. I made them this morning. The chocolate chip. Sarah took one with trembling hands. Thank you. They look delicious. Olivia loves to bake, Patricia explained, her arm protective around her daughter's shoulders. She's good at anything that needs patience and precision. Like playing piano, Sarah said. I saw you at the competition. You were amazing. Olivia straightened up slightly. You were there? Sarah nodded. That's when I realized I needed to try to make things right. Why did you give me away? Olivia asked suddenly, the question she had held inside for so long finally coming out. Was it because I'm black? The room fell silent. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but Dr. Thompson gently encouraged her to answer honestly. Yes, Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. I was young and scared. My family was racist, and I wasn't strong enough to stand up to them. I let their prejudices affect my decision, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. Olivia leaned into Patricia. But Mom wanted me. She chose me. She did, Sarah agreed. And she's given you everything I should have. I'm not here to disturb your life, Olivia. I just wanted you to know that giving you up wasn't about you. It was about my weaknesses, my fears. I have questions, Olivia said, pulling out a small notebook. About my father, about medical history, about why you named me Baby Girl Matthews on my original birth certificate instead of giving me a real name. Sarah answered each question carefully, watching as Olivia took notes in her neat handwriting. She told her about Marcus's musical talent, about family medical conditions, about her own cowardice in not naming her. Would you like to hear me play? Olivia asked after they had talked for an hour. I'm working on a new piece for the state competition. I'd love that, Sarah replied softly. Olivia moved to the piano, her safe space. Her fingers found the keys, and soon Chopin's Nocturne filled the room. As she played, both mothers watched her, one who had given her life, one who had given her everything else. When the music ended, Olivia turned back to them. I don't hate you, she told Sarah. Mom taught me that hate hurts the person feeling it more than anyone else. But I'm glad she's my mom. So am I, Sarah said honestly. You have the mother you deserved all along. As Sarah prepared to leave, Olivia surprised everyone by giving her a quick hug. Maybe you could come to my next competition, she suggested. I'd like that, Sarah answered, hope in her voice. What none of them realized was that this meeting was just the beginning of a complicated but healing journey that would change all their lives. The State Music Hall was packed for the annual Young Musicians competition. Backstage, Olivia adjusted her new blue dress, a gift from both her mothers. Patricia fixed her daughter's hair one last time, while Sarah stood nearby, holding a bouquet of flowers. You're going to be amazing, Patricia said, hugging Olivia tight. Just like you practiced. Break a leg, sweetheart, Sarah added softly. In the audience, Tom sat with the twins, who were wearing their best suits. James held up a handmade sign that read, Go Olivia, while Michael recorded everything on his new camera. The past 6 months since they'd moved to the neighborhood had changed everyone's lives. Mrs. Chen, Olivia's piano teacher, approached them backstage. 5 minutes, Olivia. Remember what we practiced. Before walking to the stage, Olivia turned to both mothers. I want you both to sit together, she said firmly. First row, where I can see you. Patricia and Sarah exchanged looks, then nodded. This was Olivia's day, and they would do anything to make it perfect. As Olivia walked onto the stage, the spotlight found her. She looked out at the audience and saw her unusual family. Patricia and Sarah sat side by side in the front row. The twins were bouncing excitedly in their seats. Tom was smiling encouragingly. Even her grandmother Patricia had flown in from Atlanta for this performance. Olivia sat at the grand piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. She had chosen Beethoven's Für Elise, but with her own special arrangement that Mrs. Chen had helped her create. The familiar melody filled the concert hall, but with extra flourishes that made it uniquely hers. In the audience, Patricia felt tears in her eyes as she watched her daughter perform. Next to her, Sarah was also crying quietly. Without thinking, Patricia reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. They had come a long way from that first tense meeting at the coffee shop. The twins stared in amazement as their big sister played. Since moving closer, they had become real siblings, fighting sometimes, but also fiercely protective of each other. James had even started piano lessons, though he complained they were much harder than they looked. As Olivia reached the final part of her piece, she played with all her heart. The music swelled through the hall, and the audience sat in complete silence, mesmerized. When she played the final note, there was a moment of stillness before the room erupted in applause. Standing ovation. Patricia and Sarah were the first on their feet, followed by the entire audience. The twins whistled loudly until Tom shushed them, and Mrs. Chen wiped proud tears from her eyes. Later that evening, after Olivia had won first place, they'd all gathered at Patricia's house for a celebration dinner. The living room was full of laughter, with pizza boxes and cake on the coffee table. Speech. James called out, and everyone turned to Olivia. She stood up, holding her trophy, and looked around at her unique family. I want to thank everyone, she began. Mom, Patricia Mom, for always believing in me and loving me no matter what. And Sarah Mom, for being brave enough to come back and try to make things right. Patricia and Sarah both had tears in their eyes again. I know our family is different, Olivia continued. Sometimes people at school don't understand how I can have 2 moms and 2 little brothers who look nothing like me. But I tell them that family isn't just about looking alike or being born to the same people. It's about love and forgiveness and trying to be better every day. The room was quiet as she finished. Then Michael piped up, Does this mean we can have pizza and cake every time you win a competition? Everyone laughed, breaking the emotional moment. As the evening went on, Patricia watched her daughter teaching James some simple piano notes, while Sarah and Tom helped Michael set up his new camera for family photos. 10 years ago, She had become a mother to a beautiful baby girl. Now somehow, that little girl had brought together two families, healed old wounds, and created something new and beautiful, just like the music she played. The story wasn't over, but it had found its harmony.